Hey, Paulina.
Hey, Lars.
We are back again. It's been a couple of weeks because of Easter since we recorded the last time.
Yes. It was weird not seeing you on a weekly basis. It's become such a ritual.
Every Friday morning, it's like, where is Lars? I need Lars. And we are diving into AI related or AI landscape today.
Yes. I mean, obviously, both you and I are diving into AI landscape every single day.
Oh,
So
yes.
maybe, and since you're doing that so much better, more efficiently and professionally than I, maybe you have a new tip or something new you can share with me so that I can improve my AI game.
Yeah, I would actually say that. But yeah, okay. I'm going to give you some news, but I don't think you can actually use it for anything in
Okay.
terms of your AI. The big news this week, I think it came out like end of last week, and we are talking 10th of February, 10th of April, 2026 today. Anybody listening in, right? Just to say, say when the news came out, is that Anthropic, which is one of the two big competitors, you have OpenAI and ChatGPT on one side, and you have Anthropic and Claude on the other side.
Mhm.
And these two, I think everybody knows this if they're using ChatGPT or anything, that there's this race going on, like who has the better model at all times, right?
Yeah.
Because ChatGPT 5, 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and you're getting like blown away. And they have been like announcing for a long time that they're going to come out with a new model called Claude Mythos,
Mhm.
which is going to
So
be
so
their lead model, right?
so currently it's Sonnet 4.6, right?
Sonnet 4.6, yes.
Yeah.
So you have Sonnet and Haiku and what's the last one? So they have three models, which basically just have different levels, right?
Yeah.
And they've been teasing like Claude Mythos for a long time. And then last week, the news came out that they are actually not going to release it right now because it's too dangerous to release.
Okay.
Um,
That's
they
that's not scary at all.
nope, not at all. No, but, and I want to say I'm very happy that it's Anthropic that comes out with this because they are considered the ethnical one of the companies. They are the one that backed out of the Pentagon deal because Pentagon wanted to use AI to kind of surveillance Americans and so on. And they said no to that. And then they got canceled. And everybody knows that the big orange monster went crazy and yeah, stuff like that. But
And
they
that's
came out
also
that
the reason why so many people then switched from
no,
okay.
they tripled their
Yeah.
revenue in 1 month.
Yeah.
1 month from
So
$11 billion to 33.
I'm one of those people. I heard the news and I immediately closed down my ChatGPT account and I moved to Claude immediately. And
Yes,
I love it. It's
yes.
so much better.
And we are not sponsored. We are not
No,
sponsored. But
not
if
yet.
you're listening
So
in, if you're listening in Anthropic, call us up. We love your products.
you can.
No, so they came out with this news here that they tested it on some of the most reliable software that's been used for decades. Like consider some of the best, most secure software for decades.
Yeah.
And they found security breaches that nobody has ever realized was in there for decades. We're talking decades, like really old, well-tested software. And they were like, okay, if we release this too early, bad actors can actually use this to find security flaws in a lot of software. So
Okay.
what they did, and again, like the opinion on the internet is going back and forth because somebody says like, oh, they're so great, they're so ethical and so on, right? And some people say, la, it's just a marketing stunt. But what they did, nevertheless, is they created something called Project Glasswing, where they invited everybody that makes what you call infrastructure critical software. This is AWS, this is
Yeah.
Microsoft, and so on, into this pool and said, we are going to give you early access to Mythos, so you can close any security gaps you might have in your software before we release it to the public.
Okay.
So that's the big news, and everybody is like you're saying, like when you hear it, it sounds kind of scary.
And that does sound kind of scary. Just like as scary as, did you hear that news that this huge consultancy firm, one of the biggest in the world, I'm not going to name names, that they were hacked and all of their, because they are, so they are consulting companies for millions and millions of euros on AI strategy and on AI safety. And their own safety was so low that it was super easy to hack them. And then the hackers exposed the lame, super childlike prompts that they had used to consult their clients on and charged them millions for. It was just huge, insanely embarrassing situation, and it
I
came
didn't
out
hear that
a
one. I
few
need to
weeks
figure out
ago.
that one.
I think it came
I
out.
need to find that one.
It's hilarious. It's scary as well, and you just keep thinking, but you'd also keep thinking, okay, this is water on the mills for everyone who's ever said that consultancies don't really deliver any value. Because, how can you consult companies on AI security and AI strategy when your senior partners can't really prompt and if they can't protect your data? It was an S show, a major, major S show.
But and honestly, I love that. So for everybody listening in, I run an AI consulting agency in Copenhagen. And we have been in talks with a company that has some portfolio companies about doing like a screen of the companies and see how we can automate and optimize all the companies and so on and so on. And they were also talking to one of the bigger ones, like the real consulting agency, the one that comes in a suit and drives a BMW and me on my bike and my hoodie right next to them. And when they told us how much they would be charging for just doing a screening of their company, we were like, but that's what we're going to charge you for the whole project, where you really get the final product as well.
Yeah.
And we are 100% convinced we can actually deliver a better product. These consulting companies, and also when you drive around in Copenhagen, I would imagine it's the same everywhere. And maybe this is just me being a pessimistic old fool. When you ride along and you see these huge glass buildings, offices on really prime locations, with them sitting in there, I'm never going to hire them because I'm paying for that rent.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's really funny, to be honest. Both of us are working as consultants, and I know that both you and I have very different business models, but still, it feels kind of funny that we're running our mouths off over consultants. But
Shit.
it's but it's just those exact things, right? Where you feel like they are just taking the piss out of people and where they're just not doing the right things and overcharging left, right, and center.
But to be honest, Paulina, again, I really don't mind them charging prime money and having these great officers and having great life and making a huge amount of money every year. I don't mind that as long as the service is worth it.
Exactly. As long as they're actually delivering value.
Yes.
That's the point.
Yes. Because I know, and I can name this company because this is positive. I know a couple of people working for Deloitte in Copenhagen. And I know some of the clients as well, these two individuals here. And both are working with startup founders. And every time I talk to somebody who has them as kind of advisors, they say they are the best advisors they ever had. Their company would
That's
never
amazing.
have come to the point where they are if they haven't met these advisors.
That's amazing. That's
And I
cool.
know these advisors, they are making tons of money. But it's worth it because they are giving success to other people as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, then that's totally fine. Then I'm not saying it against
Yes.
that. But now we
Yeah.
really need to get
Yes. Okay,
away from us
Paulina.
renting and more towards the
Yes,
actual
yes, yes, yes. But we are actually going to talk about AI today, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's do this. Are you ready?
Always.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cultures from Hell. I'm Lars, and today we are going somewhere uncomfortable. We are talking about how AI doesn't replace leaders. It reveals who shouldn't be leading in the first place. And joining me, as always, is Paulina, co-host and co-founder of Culture Code Foundation. And Paulina works at the intersection of culture, leadership, and organizational behavior. And today, I want to unpack what AI is really changing and, more important, what it's exposing. Paulina, so good to be in the studio with you again.
Good to be here as well. And welcome also from my side to all listeners. And yeah, it's going to be a fun one. It's going to sting a little bit as well. But I guess I would say it's going to sting in a good way.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. This is my neighborhood, so I'm really looking to this one.
Maybe you don't agree with me on some points then, and we'll have our first fight. Let's
Oh,
see.
that could be interesting. Okay, so before we even get into AI, I want to start one level higher. When you look at organizations today, and you've seen a lot of them, what's the real difference between leadership that creates clarity and leadership that mainly creates dependency?
Ooh, that's actually a question I wish more boards would ask before they hired anyone. Um, because in my experience, those things look almost identical from the outside. Both leaders are busy, both are in a lot of meetings, and both tend to seem very involved. The difference is what happens when they are not in the room. In a clarity culture, the team will keep moving. They will keep making decisions. People will know what good looks like and they will go do it. Whereas in a dependency culture, everything pauses. People wait. They will send emails asking for approval on things that should never have been, that should never need approval. And the leader mistakes all of that waiting for influence. And if you ask me, this kind of behavior kills organizations slowly. And I've walked into organizations, or one organization specifically, where a 15-person team had a standing rule. Nothing goes to the client until the manager reviews it. And I'm talking everything. I mean, every single freaking email, every freaking minor proposal update. And when I asked the manager why they were doing this, the answer was, and that is actually an answer that I hear frequently, I just want to ensure that the quality is right. But quality is not the problem as much or as often as control is. And that was definitely the case here. So control was the main problem. And the team knew it. The manager didn't, but the team knew it. And it led and we've been down this road before in this podcast, I know it. Micromanagement leads to people stopping to think for themselves because there simply is no point in thinking for yourself. Because their thinking would just get overridden anyway.
And it's it's really interesting when you said like that he wants to control everything that goes out, because
It was a
in
shame.
my head, no, but in my head, I was actually thinking like, before you, of course, before you did that, the next sentence, I was like, is that really that bad? If like he wants to like overlook offers going out, if it's like big offers and he's the experienced one and so on. But then you went to the next sentence, and I was like, okay, that this is insane, right? So
I
when
mean,
does this like being involved tip over into control?
the moment your involvement becomes a requirement rather than a resource. I mean, think about the time when you and I used to work together. I would
Mhm.
also look over offers if you asked me to, if you wanted a
Mhm.
second opinion, or if there was a specific point that we needed to discuss with the customer beforehand. So when you reached out to me and was like, okay, I want some clarity or simply a second pair of eyes on this offer, then of course I would do this, but this is involvement, right? But if it's a requirement, and when people don't come to you because you add value, but they come to you because the process demands it, that's the line. And a lot of leaders never see themselves cross it because it feels like they are caring. It feels like they are being responsible. But what's actually happening is that at this point, they've already built a system that only works when they are present. And that is not leadership. That is a single point of failure with a business card. Because if you if you have to be the bottleneck for all of that, you're just trying to make sure that you're irreplaceable.
Let me just repeat that for everybody listening. That's a single point of failure with a business card. I love that one. That's a T-shirt, Paulina. Another T-shirt. and 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 how does that, how does that show up in culture before people even notice it's happening?
It tends to start slowly and then hit more suddenly. So the early signs are usually very subtle. People will start qualifying their decisions. They'll say, I think this is right, but let me just check with my manager. And that phrase, let me just check, when you hear it constantly, that's the canary of the modern business world. And then in the next step, the meeting culture will shift. People suddenly, every decision needs a meeting, and every meeting needs a leader. Then the best people start leaving, not necessarily openly and loudly, but at least quietly. So this quiet, silent quitting. Either they take jobs somewhere they can actually use their brains, or they just shut off in the current culture, current job. And at that point, the culture hasn't collapsed yet, but the foundation is definitely cracked. And what makes this so insidious is that the leader often interprets all of this as proof that they are actually needed. See, I cannot step away. Everything will fall apart without me. And that's true because you designed and built it that way.
Very good point. Um, Back to AI, and now we're getting into it. Like, so a lot of people frame AI, and I see this a lot when we come out and talk to people. Like, a
Yeah,
lot
me
of
too.
people frame AI as a threat to jobs, to human relevance.
Mhm.
but your framing is different, right? So you say AI reveals weak leadership rather than replacing leadership. What's the uncomfortable truth underneath that idea?
Um, Let me just zoom out just for 1 second. I actually believe that to be true for every single person, not just for leaders. AI has the tendency to reveal weakness in people's skill set. And the uncomfortable truth is that a significant number of people in leadership positions were never really leading. I've met an incredible amount of leaders, or let me call them managers rather. They were processing information. They were sitting in the middle of communication flows. They were packaging other people's thinking and getting paid very, very well for it. And for a long time, the complexity of doing those things manually made it look like leadership. And AI is just now removing this camouflage because the leaders or managers are very busy. But if your core function is to summarize reports, brief the board on what the team produced, and make decisions based on information other people gathered, AI can do most of that much better and faster than you. And that leaves you with the question, what's left in my leadership quiver, right? And that's a question that a lot of leaders genuinely don't have an answer to. Not because they're per se incompetent people, but because they've never had to ask the question, and because they also were not necessarily ever challenged to become actual leaders in the sense of the word.
I'm gonna put a mentally pin in this one, because I actually love that one, that looking at leaders and saying, like, is this person leading, or are they just moving information or passing
Yeah.
information on to the next level, right?
Yeah.
That could actually make note to everybody. Look at your leader and see if they're actually leading you or just passing information on. Like, I need those numbers for my report for the CEO next week. They're just passing information.
Yep. Collecting, maybe making a
Yeah,
prettier.
yeah. Using AI to make it pretty. Okay, so who's most threatened by this? Is it really about skill gaps, or is it more about identity and power?
I would definitely say it's identity and power, almost entirely. The skill gap is real, but it's fixable. And identity and power is harder. Um, we are talking about people who have built their entire professional self-concept, or usually, not always, but in many cases, we're talking about people who have built their entire professional self-concept around being the leader, the person with all the information, the decision maker, the one who knows. Strip away that information advantage, and who are they? So you know me that I'm cautiously optimistic about AI. I use it constantly, and I definitely see its value. At the same time, I'm also genuinely concerned about what happens culturally when we hype AI without addressing the human dimension of it. Because the leaders who feel most threatened are not going to respond by becoming more vulnerable and more human, and by the way, by doing so, becoming better leaders. But the leaders who are feeling most threatened are actually going to tighten their grip. They're going to exercise more control. They're going to build up more layers, more surveillance disguised as process. And that's the part that nobody's really talking about at the moment.
And what kind of leaders feels exposed first?
I would say the ones whose authority was based on access rather than actual judgment. So the manager who was the only person who understood the reporting system, so that everyone had to come through them. The director that hoarded client relationships because that was their leverage. That's one that we see a lot. The VP who controlled what information reaches the C-suite and used that editorial power as influence. Also something I see a lot. And
Uh-huh.
when AI democratizes access to information and analysis, that kind of power almost completely evaporates. And those people know it, even if they can't articulate it. And you see it in how they react, because those are the people that tend to become the loudest skeptics of AI in meetings. Not because they thought through the risks carefully, but because they are scared of losing their influence. Usually they have understood the capabilities of AI really, really well. And that's what scares them, because they are seeing, okay, this is evaporating what makes
That,
me
I,
comfortable.
But that's actually a very good point. I don't have any cases that we have worked with to illustrate this, but it makes me think about, like, a lot of the work we are asked to do is, let's say we have 10 people in sales or any role,
Mhm.
right? And every week they have to do a report, and let's just say they're doing this the old-fashioned way. They're giving a spreadsheet to the manager, and then the manager kind of copy-pastes this. He might have macros in place to put it into another spreadsheet that puts it into a PowerPoint that he downloads as a PDF and sends on to the CEO, right? And I know some people are saying that, oh, that's all theory, like that doesn't happen. Yes, it
It
happens a
does.
lot out there.
It does.
But it just makes me think, like what you're saying, that this is really a problem, because this person sitting there gathering all this information, and it might not be, and I'm going to do this in quotation mark, it might not be a bad person. It's just been his or her job always.
Yes,
And
it
then
has.
somebody comes in and say, like, hey, give me 10 seconds with Claude. And again, Claude, call us up. We would like a sponsorship. 10 seconds with Claude, and I can automate all that 100% for you.
Yeah,
And this person's job just went out the window, right?
exactly. Exactly.
And also, I would imagine that somebody in the middle management who kind of likes the power a little bit, like, if they lose that connection with the CEO, where they have to go and give that report, and the CEO says, come in and have a cup of coffee, they'd lose that. They would be so intimidated by it.
100%. And the really bad part here is that they are just looking at what it means for them, right? They're not looking at the
Uh-huh.
broader positive um, implications. Because you said there are five or six people involved that fill the spreadsheets and turn it into different spreadsheets or whatnot, right? Their their time is free to spend on things that actually create value. Um,
Uh-huh.
in at the Culture Code Foundation, we do multiple trainings, as you know. But one of the trainings is around time and task management,
Uh-huh.
because we are seeing, and studies actually prove that the modern Western office worker spends between 50 and 60% of his time or her time on work about work, and only 27% of their time working on the actual core responsibilities of their roles. And obviously, that is a huge benefit that AI can provide to get rid of this work about work in order to ensure that you can actually produce value for a broader part of your working life, and then also feel more content with actually being productive and actually getting things done. And if you have managers that actively prevent that because they are afraid of being irrelevant, um, then you keep your company and your people stuck in this dynamic.
Which is a very good point, because you will keep them stuck there.
Yeah.
Okay, Paulina, let's go deeper on that. Like, what exactly does AI make visible that used to stay hidden?
Three things primarily. First, clearly poor thinking. When
Mm-hmm.
a junior team member can generate a solid first draft of a strategic analysis in 20 minutes using AI, and your senior manager takes 3 days to produce something roughly equivalent, the gap is now visible. It wasn't before. Before, the 3 days would have looked like thoroughness. Now it looks like something else. Secondly, decision hoarding. When AI can give teams faster, cleaner information to make decisions themselves, the leaders who insist everything still flows through them are suddenly very conspicuous. Their bottleneck function becomes blatantly clear, and you can see exactly where things slow down and why. And third thing, and that's the one that probably stings most, is confusing busyness with value. This goes down exactly what I mentioned before, right? That we're spending about 60% of our time on work about work. And that is also true for leadership, because there is a whole category of leadership behavior that is fundamentally performative. The manager who's always in back-to-back meetings, always on, always responding to things the minute they come in. AI is ruthlessly efficient. It doesn't perform urgency. When you put it next to that kind of leader, the theater becomes impossible to ignore.
And what are some concrete leadership behaviors that looked acceptable before AI, but now suddenly like look weak?
Sitting on decisions is the big one for me. We have collectively normalized the idea that good decisions take time, and sometimes they do, right? So, ironically, when it comes to releasing a new AI model, that is a huge decision that should take ample consideration and potentially take a few weeks longer if there are stakes, if there are high stakes, right? So complex, high stakes, genuinely ambiguous decisions do need time, yes. But most decisions that have to be made in a business context are not that. Most decisions are just decisions. And we are actually teaching that also at the Culture Code Foundation, how you can use AI to generate options, model scenarios, and outline trade-offs in minutes by using simple templates and potentially just dictating your thoughts into the AI and then combine your thoughts with the template. And when all of that happens, if you do all of that, then a leader who takes 2 weeks to greenlight a campaign, approve a hire, or sign off on a proposal is no longer protected by this line of, I was gathering all the information, all the necessary information and data. Because the information is already there now, and it's readily available. And now it becomes clear that they are just not deciding. And that's a character thing, not a process thing. And I want to be a bit fairer here on this point, because also for leaders, obviously decision making becomes easier now, right? And so I'm not saying that everyone who used to take 2 weeks for a decision was always performing this, right? I'm definitely not saying that, because that was just the reality for so long for all of us. But nowadays, if you still do it the old school way, then we're in the performative part about it. Another thing, and that was always true, that was always true, repackaging other people's ideas and thinking. And we all know people like this. Every organization has leaders like this who are excellent at taking what the team produced, the ideas of peers or people that are reporting to you, reformatting it slightly, just changing the wording a little bit and presenting it upward as their own contribution. That's been a career strategy for decades, and it's worked like a charm, mostly for men, obviously. And AI, I wouldn't necessarily say it made it completely obsolete, but it made it less believable, so much more less believable, because anyone can generate polished summaries and executive presentations and then this skill of repackaging has very little differentiating value nowadays. Unfortunately, AI does not yet kill the confidence with which people present now even AI ideas and AI summaries as their own. But that's a different topic, and I'm not going to go into that rabbit hole. And then there is mistaken control for quality. And this one I really care about deeply. The leaders who review everything, approve everything, insert themselves into everything, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say many of them genuinely believe that they are maintaining standards. But what they are actually doing is signaling that they don't trust their team. And you've heard me say this before, the worst behavior you accept becomes the norm. And if the norm is nothing goes out without my eyes on it, you are telling your team that their judgment cannot be trusted. And they will behave accordingly. They will stop exercising judgment.
Is AI forcing organizations to ask a harder question? What is a leader actually for?
I would definitely say so. And from my point of view, that is about time, because I think the honest answer to that question in many, many organizations has been murky at best for years. We promote people into leadership because they were very good at the job that they used to do, which is a little bit like promoting your best surgeon to run the hospital because they are an excellent surgeon. But the skills are not the same. Leadership is not an advanced version of your previous job. It's a fundamentally different function that needs completely different skill sets. And not all of them can be learned, to be honest. A lot of around leadership is a methodology that can be learned. It's a handiwork. But if you're genuinely not curious, if you're genuinely not interested in people, if you're genuinely unempathetic, you have no business being a leader. And if on top of that, AI handles the information layer, synthesis, analysis, drafts, summary, approvals, etc., then what's left for the leader is the irreducibly human stuff. Judgment under uncertainty, setting direction when data doesn't give you a clean answer, setting direction in tumultuous times, creating the conditions where people feel safe enough to bring their best thinking, where they don't stop functioning because they're constantly under pressure and anxiety. Having the courage to take a position and stand behind your people. Building trust, not the warm feelings kind of trust, but the operational kind of trust. The kind where people know what to expect from you and where they can rely on your consistency. None of that can be automated. None of that can be replaced by AI. But, and this is really critical, none of it was being done particularly well before AI either. AI is now just stripping away the things that used to fill the calendar and made it possible to avoid the question, if you're actually doing the real work of leadership.
I love this. I love your perspective on how this can expose bad leaders. And again, like you said, we're not putting every leader out there. There are a lot of very good leaders,
Yes.
but the one, like you're saying, like you said before, the one that's just moving the information and maybe even taking information, making it prettier so it looks like they're the one serving it to the management, right? I love this, and yeah, we might sell this as a product in our company.
And
Expose your leader.
I also want to break the bar for leaders, because leading is such a beautiful job, but it's also such a difficult job. And I know that so many people are afraid of becoming leaders because people left, right, and center bash leaders, and we are bashing leaders here
Yeah.
as well. But in so many instances, people have the right instincts, who could be really, really good leaders, just don't receive the necessary training and support from the organization in order to fulfill that potential of being a great leader. And so this is, for all the leaders listening, it is not necessary. Maybe if you are being an a-hole, then this is against you. But I'm not ranting against every single leader here. It's more of an appeal to organizations to be more careful who you're appointing to become leaders and how you're supporting those leaders that you're appointing.
And also, I would say also a message to anybody listening out there that might be like the best salesperson. You're hitting all the targets or above the targets. You might be the best coder on the team and so on. If they approach you and want you to be a leader, really think about, are you really a good leader? Just because you're really, really good at what you do, that doesn't make you a good leader. Like you said just a few minutes back, it's like it requires a completely different skill set to be a leader than to be a good coder or a good salesperson or a good support worker or
Yeah.
whatever. It doesn't make you a good leader.
No, not necessarily. And exactly. And so the very least thing you should insist on is leadership training when you promoted in such a decision, in such a position.
Yeah. Okay, Paulina, let's talk about delegation.
Yes.
Because I think it's where a lot of this becomes concrete. Why do so many leaders struggle to delegate even before AI enters the picture?
Because delegation requires trust. And trust requires accepting that things might be done differently to how you would do them. And it also requires accepting that different is not the same as doing it wrong. And that's genuinely hard for a lot of people who were hired for and build their identity around being really good at their work. And there's also a very specific fear that is not usually named honestly, the fear of becoming unnecessary. If I delegate everything that I'm good at, what's left? What's left? What do I do? That question terrifies people who don't have a clear answer to what leadership actually is. Only if you fully grasp the full scope of leadership will you see that you have so much things to do that nobody else can do for your team. But if you don't grasp that, then you will hold on. They will keep their hands in the work. They will believe that being operationally involved is necessary at this stage. That things can't run without them. They will tell themselves it's standards, it's quality, it's care, it's just necessary. Again, sometimes that might be true for small startups in very early stages where all leaders have to get their hands dirty in the operational work. I get that reality. But in many, many cases, especially in more mature organizations, underneath this is the fear the fear of invisibility or of being the person who just sits in meetings and talks. And then there is perfectionism, which is insecurity wearing a very professional coat. And we've discussed one of those leaders in one of the episodes before. And I think I've said it a lot of times that micromanagers usually are feeling very insecure. The leader who says nobody does this as well as I do is often right in a narrow technical sense, but catastrophically wrong in the bigger strategic sense. Yes, your first draft might be better than your team member's first draft. But if you write every first draft, your team never develops. And it's your bloody job as a leader to be a coach, to make sure that the team develops, that they become stronger, that they become ideally better than you. And if you don't do this, if you don't coach them, if you don't delegate, they will never surpass you, which means, yes, you might have made your own job more secure, but at the same time, you have just capped the ceiling of your entire function at your own skill level. And that's not leadership. That is hoarding and protecting your own behind.
What then happens when AI gives teams more autonomy? Does that create better leadership or just more panic from leaders who need to be needed?
I would say both. In healthy organizations with leaders who have at least some level of self-awareness, AI-assisted autonomy is genuinely liberating. Teams then can move faster, they can make better informed decisions at lower levels of hierarchy without having to involve upper levels. The leader's role elevates, less execution oversight, more strategic direction and pace setting. That's actually a better job, more interesting, more impactful for the leader. And it also gives them more power or more influence. In unhealthy organizations, you will get the panic part. Not obviously expressed as panic. It will show up more as policy. Suddenly there are new approval processes, new governance frameworks, new questions about AI risk that are actually just anxiety about control dressed up in responsible sounding language. I have seen a company introduce a 12-step approval process for any AI-generated content within 6 months of rolling out an AI tool to their teams. 12 steps. The stated reason was accuracy and brand consistency. The real reason was that a few senior leaders were terrified of what their teams could now produce without them. And the absurdity here is you use AI to speed things up, to become more productive and effective, and then this kind of approval process kills all of that benefit. It blows my mind.
And Paulina, I'm gonna say that I am loving the direct version of this next question here. If somebody wants to absolutely guarantee they fail as a leader in the age of AI, what should they do?
I love it when you ask this kind of question. But I just want to make very sure that everyone understands that I'm being fully sarcastic now. So micromanage the inputs while demanding better outputs. That's a classic. Tell people what to do and how to do it and when to do it, and then be confused when they don't take initiative or ownership. Then never explain the why. Just deliver decisions from on high without any context. Because in an AI-augmented environment, your team has access to enormous amounts of information. If you are making the decisions that they don't understand, they are going to start questioning whether you know what you're doing. And they might be right in asking that question. Then, thirdly, I would say demand innovation, but punish any risk. This one's everywhere. We need to be more innovative. We need to come up with more ideas. And then the first person who ships something that doesn't work perfectly gets the head taken off in the review or even gets fired. You don't get innovation without failure. Full stop. And if you make failure unsafe, you get compliance and mediocrity, not innovation. And probably the most sophisticated way to fail, use AI for speed while keeping the exact same control structure. Automate the work, but not the decision rights. So now your team produces twice as much in half the time, but they are still waiting just as long for approvals. You have just created a tighter bottleneck. Congratulations.
And I would say that the last one is something we see very, very, very often. We just did a big project for a huge Danish company. And this was actually the case. We automated something that took 3 weeks and went down to like 5 hours. With even that. But the next step in the process, they haven't thought about that. So now it just kind of, just like you said, like the bottleneck, it just piled up. But again, for us, it's good business because they came to us and said like, hey, we need to automate the next part as well. And we were like, okay, but now let's think about the next part and the next part until you actually deliver the product before we actually start doing something. Okay, Paulina. So what does healthy delegation actually look like now that AI can assist with execution and preparation?
So healthy delegation starts with the clarity about what leaders should still own. And in my view, that's 3 things. Judgment calls that require context, relationship knowledge, or values alignment that can't be encoded into a prompt. Accountability is the second one. Someone who has to own the outcome publicly and unambiguously, and having their teams back at the same time. And then, and that is probably the most important one as leaders in an AI age, is the human dimension. Coaching, conflict resolution, having the crucial conversations that require genuine presence, empathy, and curiosity. Those things have to stay with the leader, have to stay there, and have to be developed because they're becoming even more important. Everything else, research, operational involvement, analysis, synthesis, process documentation, routine communication, etc. That's fair game to delegate from my point of view, including to AI assistant processes. The leader's job is to set the standard for what good looks like, create the conditions where the team can operate confidently at that standard, and then get out of the way. And that was always leadership, a leader's job. Those things were always a leader's job. The guardrail question I always ask leaders is, does your team know what good looks like without you in the room? And then if you ask the same question to the team and the answer is yes, then you have done your job well. If the answer is no, no amount of AI adoption is going to fix your delegation problem and your leadership problem. Because the issue isn't tools. The issue is that you've never made your standards explicit or explicit enough for someone else to execute against them.
I like that. I like that. And I would say that I was just about to give some good advice, but it might become too nerdy in this age. When you work with coding and also Claude and Claude skills and a lot of cool stuff, there's something called MD files, Markdown files.
Mhm.
And one of the first things you should do if you want to use like Claude or any AI for doing like reports, presentations, blah, 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 is create a design.md file. That's actually what you're saying. Like everybody should know that file. You're just putting in like everybody should know what good looks like. And I'm just kind of, I'm very concrete thinking. If you have these files, everybody should know them by heart because that's going to tell you what good looks like
Yes.
at all points, right?
And
That might become too nerdy. I'm sorry about that.
no, I love it. I love it because it is so on point, and you won't believe how many teams, companies, organizations, leaders I experience that do not know how to set clear expectations and that have a clear rules of engagement or how we work together. And so people are floating around in space without really knowing what they're working against, what they're working towards, and how they are supposed to, what good behavior looks like, not just good results, but also good behavior, right?
Uh-huh.
Because there is, and so many leaders think, yeah, but this is implicitly here. But everything that's implicit is interpretable. So make it explicit, write it down, document it, and enforce it. Make sure to call on people who don't live up to those standards, who don't perform up to the standards, or don't behave up to those standards. And those are crucial things that no AI will ever be able to take away from you. So
100%. And Paulina, that's going to be our stopping point for part one. As always, great topics. Time just flashes by. So we're gonna do a 2-part episode and
yes.
yet another 2-part episode. So this one we've been talking about how AI functions as a mirror, not replacing leadership, but making it impossible to hide the gaps. And we have gone into clarity versus dependency, what makes what AI makes visible, and why delegation is the first place most leaders either step up or fall apart. And next week in part 2, we are going to we're going to get into trust, like the real operating system underneath of this all. Like we'll talk about decision-making theater, what it actually means to be exposed as a leader, and what strong leadership looks like now. Any last thoughts here before we close down part 1?
Just this, maybe. If you have been listening and you have recognized yourself in some of what we described, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That can also be the beginning of something. The worst outcome isn't being the leader who has these gaps. The worst outcome is being the leader who never sees them. So if you're uncomfortable right now, that's really good. Please stay with that. Because when you're being uncomfortable, that's when you can start to grow. And we'll give you something to grow towards in our part 2 of this episode.
And before we close down, Paulina, just please remind our listeners where they can find out, where they can reach out to us if they have any questions, and so on.
You can always find both Lars and myself on LinkedIn and Instagram. And you can find the Culture Code Foundation on culturecodefoundation.com or also in LinkedIn. We will put all social media handles in the show notes so that you can reach out to either Lars or myself if you want to work with us or if you want to be on the show and tell your own story. We would love to hear your story, either told by yourself live on the podcast, or you can also write your story to us and we will re-narrate it in an anonymous way if that's what you wish for. We really like to spruce up these episodes with real life stories.
Yes, we would. Okay, everybody, thank you for listening in. I'm Lars. You've been listening to Culture from Hell. Part 2 drops next week. See you there.
See you there. Bye.